Hello, and welcome to the latest installment in our UXDX online series. I hope you're as excited as I am for the talks that we have today. But before we jump into those, I want to give a really quick introduction to UXDX and why we host these sessions. So at UXDX, our motto is that the world is full of bad software. And what I mean by that, it's not that you have bad skills or people building poor quality software. I think it's down to the processes that we're following where we're locking in ideas before we've really validated them with customers. So our mission is to really help companies build an environment that can't build bad software. So that's what we're trying to achieve. And one of our key ways of doing that is by hosting these events where people are sharing how they're improving their ways of working and adopting latest practices. So hopefully you can learn from them and adapt that in your organization as well. So the core aim or how we're trying to help companies shift is move away from waterfall, where you're locking in ideas early, to empowered product teams where you go the whole way from researching it to testing out some new designs to actually building and validating. So hopefully as the talks go on, you'll have some questions. Please write them in on whichever platform you're watching on, and I'll pass those questions through to the speakers. But that's enough about me. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker for this evening, which is Bhrunali Gokhe, who is a UX design specialist at Accenture. And Bhrunali will be talking about AI and emotional design, creating empathetic user experiences. So I'd like to welcome Bhrunali to the stage. Bhrunali, over to you.
Hello, Roy. Thank you for the small introduction. Very good evening, everyone. Myself, Bhrunali Gokhe, and I work with Accenture Design Studio. So today, basically, we are going to, explore the fascinating intersection of artificial intelligence and emotional design. We are also going to see how this pairing can help, you know, uh, to understand the user experiences. I'll be showcasing the real world examples in order to, understand the ideas in a much better way. So let's dive in. So, what is the role of AI in emotional design? And to understand that, it's very important to understand how AI basically functions. So, AI is being categorized into three different categories, that is, artificial narrow intelligence, generative AI, and artificial general intelligence. I would like to quote few examples for you guys to understand what these categories are basically talking about. So, artificial narrow intelligence, you must be knowing that you must be aware of these products like smart speakers, the platforms like web searches, the AI inbuilt car dashboards, and so on. That's where artificial narrow intelligence comes into picture. The generative AI, which is the next one, uh, everyone in our day-to-day activities must be using any of the platforms which are being generated using the generative AI. Few of them I would like to name it as Cloud AI, uh, Google Gemini, Copilot, and few of the designing softwares are Midjourney and DALL-E. And the third one, that is artificial general intelligence. It's nothing but an AI which can do anything a human can do. So this is the basic, differentiation, or a way AI basically performs. Now moving on to the role of AI in terms of emotional design, there are five stages which everyone should understand to understand the role of an AI. So every point I'll be sharing an example in order to convey the concept in a much better way. Talking about creating emotional intelligence system. When we say emotionally intelligent system, it means empathizing with the end users, a platform which can empathize the user. There is a very good application name as Effectiva, which is nothing but it actually gains insights from the user's facial expression. So for example, if the user is using any product, so by looking at the expression or capturing the facial expressions, the platform can actually gather the emotional insights. So that's what creating emotionally intelligent system refers to. The second one is bridging the human machine gap. Again, the relevant example to this particular section would be Tesla's in car AI integration, which actually recognizes driver's fatigue and pushes an alert message which ensures safety, and by it also make decisions based on the inbuilt inputs which are being provided by the users, such as traffic conditions, uh, uh, I would say the conditions of the road, and so forth and so on. The third point, which says application across industry. So here I would like to mention one of my latest example where I have worked on. So I was creating a DAB platform for one of my client, uh, where so basically DAM is nothing but a platform, a repository for storing their assets, brand assets. So there we have integrated AI searches to uh, explore more of the metadata. Secondly, we integrated AI uh, with the design softwares so that the designers can edit those assets then and there instead of having a third party software installation. Even if it's not there, the functioning won't stop. The fourth one, that is emotion recognition and real time feedback. For this, again, there is a very good example. There is a platform named Zendesk. So this platform is nothing but a customer support platform, and what it does, it actually detects the frustration. So if the platform detects any negative sentiment, the query will be escalated to human agent. So that's how the emotions are being recognized and the right solution or a feedback is being provided. And the last point, it says is enhancing personalization. So we all know that in this era of AI, every tool which is there in the market is providing a personalization or a customization in some or the other way. So moving on, we must understand the principles when we talk about emotional design. Uh, I think almost everyone, or especially the designers, must be aware about all these concepts, but not particularly in terms of technical terms. So let me take you to this. So three principles of emotional designs are behavioral and reflective. When we say versatile, it's nothing but the aesthetical appeal of the product. The second, behavioral, how that product is being used, what is the user experience of the product which is being provided to the end user. And the third, that is the deeper understanding of the product and what value it has been adding while using that particular product. Let's see this with an example. When I think of Apple as a brand, the the first thought which comes to my mind is the sleek design which it provides and the minimal look and feel. Talking about its behavior, yes, it gives a fantastic user experience. Also, it provides best safety measures. And similarly, for reflective, everyone must have been using the smartwatches. So, in spite just providing the time, it also gives you an additional value added. For example, giving you a health or fitness updates, uh, maybe adding a value to your current lifestyle. So that's how these principles are being measured and kept in mind. So, as we will be designing the experiences, or a platform or a product using emotional intelligence, it is also required to understand how the users are going to react to that particular product or a platform, and those needs to be measured using few techniques. Here are few of them. First is emotion mapping, user surveys, AI powered tools. So I'll support all the three techniques with an example for better understanding. So emotion mapping is nothing but visualizing the emotion in a form of a journey, like how the user reacts. So for example, let's take an application, a login screen. If it doesn't have a register now button, just imagine the frustration a user must be having. And similarly, there is a very good example for emotion mapping, where a well-known brand like Coca-Cola has used emotion, AI and emotion for their latest ad campaign to connect with the end users. So before continuing with the other two techniques, I would like you all to see this video. Okay, I think this video isn't working. Okay, I'll be sharing that video link here in the chat bot. Maybe that can help you guys.
Yeah, I don't think we'll be able to play it on this platform, but if we share the link afterwards, we can send it out to people because some
Yeah,
people
yeah.
are a little bit delayed in their buffering. Thank you.
Uh, okay, maybe after the maybe after my presentation, I would be sharing that over to the team. But yeah, going ahead, the second technique is user surveys. So what user surveys does are not different from the Google surveys what we perform during our research phase. And the third is AI powered platform. When we say AI powered platform, so as I already quoted one of the very good example, that is Effectiva, which tracks the and takes the insights using the facial expressions. Another example I would like to quote here is KLM Airlines, which is again a customer support platform which actually tracks the queries using the voice of tone and the text uh, to understand the user behavior. So these are few techniques which we should consider. Uh, Talking about designing for emotional intelligence, there are four areas which we should consider, and we'll understand these four stages with a very good example. So there is an application named as uh, Calm app, which is basically used for meditation and sleep support. So let's understand this with a scenario. For example, we are using a Calm app where the user puts an input prompt, maybe, which says, uh, let's say, get a sleep faster or relieve stress. So based on this input, the application will collect the data and throw a reply saying, based on the emotion, the current emotion, it will provide a mood slider to the end user. Now, moving to the emotional analysis, the user input which is being taken by the application, it will understand how the emotions of the user are being uh, gathered. So it will perform an algorithm where it will see how frequently the user uses these phrases. For example, is it every so and so period the user actually uses this phrase, for example, relieve stress or get sleep faster. So based on that, it will create a pattern, and based on that pattern, it will throw an adaptive response. When we say adaptive response, it means that the user is facing an emotional emotional, I would say, sentiment, for which the user might need an extra emotional boost up or a support. So the application will throw a, a push notification, a motivational push notification, which might say that you need to take extra care of yourself. It's high time to get down to bed. So these are few examples how adaptive responses actually react. And moving towards the last one, that is user feedback. It is nothing but, for example, if the user has completed one of the meditation session within the application will throw a pop-up message saying that, can you rate this application, or do you have any comment, how can we improve the user experience, in order to tailorize the content in a much better way. So these are few practices which we actually should consider while creating, or creating any product or an application based on these ideas. Uh, there are few case studies, out of which Calm we have just discussed. There is Spotify and Duolingo. I would like you guys to go and check this, case studies, which is particularly based on AI and emotional intelligence. We don't have that much time that I could explore this in detail, but yeah, a very good recommendation, I would say. Uh, so, talking about the challenges and consideration when we talk about AI and emotional intelligence, privacy concerns, definitely they are, a very crucial part of it, where the consent with the end users and how the data is being responsibly used needs to be conveyed. When we say ethical consideration, we must follow the ethical guidelines in order to be, safeguarded with the recent deepfake crimes which are being going in the current scenarios. To tackle biases and fairness, I would say AI model needs to be frequently monitored or audited. And also, AI can be trained in a way, with a vast data set, with multiple diverse demographics, cultures and contexts, where we can actually reduce the biasness and move towards the fairness of providing the solution. And the last, that is user transparency. So when we say user transparency, here the end user must know how AI is being AI is being used to influence their emotional experiences, in order to have that trust while using any of the applications. So here I would like to end my session and open the forum for Q&A. Uh, I would like to have open thoughts, not just the questions, any suggestions, any thoughts on the topic. I know it was a small presentation due to time constraints. There is a lot we could actually explore. But yeah, I would like to hand it over to the team.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Bhrunali. So yes, as Renee mentioned, write in your questions on whichever platform you're watching this on, whether it's YouTube, LinkedIn, our platform, and I'll gather all those questions through. But I'm going to just get the ball rolling, because it was a great example of the adaptive responses with CAM. But I'm just thinking practically, how would a designer or researcher or developer, how would you prototype that out, or how would you design something that's like adaptive so it can go in many different ways?
So when we say adaptive, it's basically more towards the responsive sides of it. So for example, nowadays, it's very very in trend and very very important to have a design which is very responsive across all the platforms, right? And for that, we do have a plugins within Figma. We have multiple tutorials which we need to explore, because Figma has recently come up with very latest AI integrations which can help us create, prototypes, high fidelity designs in a much more responsive way.
So I guess my question was less about adaptive. Like I guess that's the screen sizes and being able to
Right,
kind of work on a mobile as well as a desktop.
right,
But where I'm going with my mind is that when I'm designing something, I think of a nice linear flow, and it's nice and neat, and it's very easy because it's kind of step one goes to step two, goes to step three. But and I guess I think unless I misunderstood the point about the adaptive, is it kind of realizes, okay, you don't need to go through steps 2 and 3. You can jump to step 4 because it understands more about you rather than being a dumb system that always makes people go through all the steps. Is that correct in my understanding, or did I misinterpret it?
So when we say adaptive, we go through a particular process, right? As you mentioned. So we just cannot jump to the final stage. And we all know that designing it's all about process, right? So we do the iteration maybe from different stages, but we cannot jump to the final stage. So for creating any of the application or product, we have to go through multiple stages. So we when we say stages, there are 5 different stages which we actually follow while creating any design or a solution, right? So those 5 steps are definitely mandatory to be followed.
Okay, so it's actually following the exact same process internally when you're building it as you would a normal pre-AI application.
Right.
Right. And the other question I had, I know that you were kind of tight for time, but you mentioned Duolingo, and I've heard a lot about the potential for AI in, particularly in education, because you have that one-on-one tutor, which is kind of infinitely better than, or well, 2 orders of magnitude better than a classroom environment. So, do you have any examples of what Duolingo are doing in the space? Because I've heard a lot about it, but I've yet to see a really good product coming out in the space.
Yes. So AI integration, when we say in educational sector, it has taken a vast turn and has done a lot of it and given to the educational sector. There was one of the case studies where I was researching. I will give my live example. I was a person during my schooling where I never used to like to study history as a subject. But nowadays, there are platforms where history has been made so interesting using the 3D animations which we have, the 3D integrations which we have within AI, also using a storytelling, which is one of the very good aspect when we talk about presentation. So instead of having just a boring textbooks, today they actually have a 3D animation to be explained how history happened, how the events happened in the past, which, so as we all know that visuals actually gives human uh, you know a visualization, an image of what has happened, which actually brings curiosity within the students to understand and bring that I would say curiosity to learn more. So that's how AI has been contributing and adding a value within the educational sector.
Great. Yeah. And I guess that's that interactive bit as well, because each student
Yes,
goes at a slightly different pace. Yeah.
right.
We have a question come in from Matthew. Thanks for the insightful presentation. I'm curious if you have any specific examples of how one can address or avoid inherited bias in AI.
Can you please repeat?
So Matthew's asking if you have any examples. So you talked about the risk of bias. So he's
Right.
asking if you have any examples of how one can address it or avoid bias. So what can they do to proactively make sure that doesn't happen?
when we say bias, it's not just with the AI, which is happening nowadays. Even we as humans have that bias factor, right? For example, if you like any particular application, right, and if you are frequently using it, you will have that bias intent towards using that again and again, even though the competitor of that particular platform might have come up with some new, add-on feature or so. So in that case, being, since we as a designer, we should avoid having biases. Reason being, if a designer is on the neutral phase, one can actually explore many opportunities which are being provided uh, to the competitive products, for actually, with whom we are working on. So to have that open mindedness, we should have that neutral, space, and explore the various opportunities, being a competitor, or the new trends which are being there in the market. So that's how you grow. uh, and yeah, so, and talking about the bias in terms of AI, so how AI basically has that bias effect, I would say it's because of the machine. The particular algorithm has been set, and to tackle that biases, I've already mentioned that we can have a multiple diverse data set, where we can train a AI, or audit an AI model with, by providing multiple diverse demographics, cultures, and new contexts, so that even the AI should not have that bias in providing any end result to the users.
It's a great point about making sure there's diverse input. There's also a fantastic interview. I can't remember the name of the person in OpenAI, but they talk about red teaming, where they actively go in and try to find all of the biases and all of the um,
Right.
the breakage points in their models. So yeah, I'd recommend looking up red teaming. Um,
That's a great input.
we have another question, but unfortunately we're just out of time. So maybe what we'll do is we'll post that question, and on our Slack channel, I'll invite you, Bhrunali, to come and answer it there as well. And there's a
Sure,
comment as
sure.
well about sharing the video link. So if you just want to post that on our private chat
Of
here,
course, of course. I'll just do that right away.
brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Bhrunali.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much, audience, for being, being there till the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So up next, we have our second talk of this evening, which is Madhwan Mirza, who is a senior product manager at Booking.com. And Madhwan will be talking about product managers and UX designers, a match made in heaven, or maybe not. So I'd like to welcome Madhwan to the stage.
Hey, hi there, hi Rory. Yeah, let me share. This is probably the most nerve-wracking part of the presentation to see if the sharing works. I'm not worried about. So let's see. Okay,
If you just put it into presentation,
okay,
there we go.
perfect.
Lovely.
So the nerve-wracking part is done. Cool. My title amazing. I thought a lot about what should my title be. I mean, you will hear more about what I do, but like in theory, I feel UX DX doesn't get a lot of PMs, but hey, I feel designers and PM have like this love-hate relationship. And I thought that ideally it should be a match made in heaven, right? Like you work together, you come up with great ideas, you launch great products. But is that the case? I don't know. And that's where I thought that let's put this question in the title itself. A bit about me. My name is Madhvan, SPM, work at Booking.com, take care of the mobile platform. I lived in a lot of places. So I live in the Netherlands right now. Before that, I've lived in Taiwan, Malaysia, Singapore, India. Before joining Booking.com, I was working as a PM in AirAsia, which is one of world's leading low-cost airline. And before that, I was in a Belgium company called Barco. And in my previous life, I like to say I was actually a developer. So I was actually doing hands-on coding, developing mobile apps. On a personal note, I love learning languages, so I can speak Mandarin fluently. I can speak a bit of Spanish, trying to learn a bit of Dutch. I love talking about products. I was in Zurich Product Management Festival talking about career growth. Before that, I was also in Agile Manchester, where I talked about diversity at workplace for product managers. So yeah, I love public speaking in general. And let's start today's topic with a very common scenario. I think most people here who work in future teams would agree. Usually as a PM would go to a developer and we would have this Slack message or a meeting saying that, hey, here's something really cool. I want to get this done. What do you think? A developer would be like, okay, your PRD looks good. Let me take a look at this. I'm going to get back on how things are. A week passes, I nudge the person like, hey, what do you think? And the developer is like, yeah, it looks good. Everything is fine. There is some work needed, but yeah, not a lot of stuff to do. And there's a question which is usually thrown, like, I noticed that you got a couple of designs in there. When are we gonna get those mocks ready? And that's a question which like every PM hates because somehow you're like, why don't you get the work started? And this is what a reply is often, where you are like, you know what? It's not a lot of work on design. Just get started. You will get the designs real soon. Uh, and here is a poor designer. There somewhere. There's a reason why I put it at the end, because they're usually somewhere who is like, yeah, I know you. I'm hearing about this cool feature, but no one is approaching me. Like, what's gonna happen? Are you gonna draw the design yourself? And eventually, I do, which is like 4 days or 3 days or the minimum amount of time, and I go to the designer and I'm like, you know what? Can I get a Figma? Can I get a prototype for this amazing PRD? And I drop a nice message saying by next week. I'm not a designer, but I can already feel, the designer at that moment is like, okay, but actually, I'm pretty sure, and based on my years working with designers and researchers and those folks, they have a lot of questions. Things like, hey, who are the people who are going to be using this? How can I actually help? Why are we doing this? Can you share with me the bigger picture? Because I know how designers think. They are all about the bigger picture, trying to understand what is the bigger problem we are trying to solve. And obviously, as a PM, sometimes I'm like, please don't make something crazy. I want this to be rolled out. I got OKRs to complete. Please don't slow us down. I will be honest, I've been at this stage where I felt like, and I've heard this, and I can personally see that often I have this fear of going to a designer expecting things to already slow down. And of course, I will tell why it's so wrong. But often, all of these things are in a PM's mind. And that is one of the big problems, which I will talk that how a lot of product managers don't actually see designer as a core part. They don't consider them to be, a partner in crime, but rather like a support team, which hopefully doesn't slow them down. And then I like to call this as the anti-collaboration pattern, where eventually the designs are ready, and the developer is like, what the hell? This is not a part of the deal. I can't do this. This is so much work. These are animations. I can't do this. And the poor product manager at this moment is like, can I just die? Like, I promised everything to the developer. My, I don't know, VP of product is expecting a launch, and this is what I'm going to deal with. But this is really true, and this might seems like I'm really overreacting, but this is true. In a lot of places, this happens quite a lot, where devs and designers and PMs are never on the same page. And I can talk about amazing teams. I'm not going to name anyone, but think of the big names, products you use, happens everywhere. And eventually, no one is happy. A developer, and I know because I've worked in technical teams, developers often feel that they're just changing stuff. They implement something and then they have to change something. PMs feel like they're just hoping and praying they can get a design ready because they don't really validate stuff. And designers are feeling that they can't really contribute. They are basically doing stuff for their PM, but they don't really get the chance to showcase what they can do. And I got this from ChatGPT. I mean, let's be honest. I could never create something like this, but this is actually what I imagine a room would be, where no one is happy. There is an amazing roadmap and there is an amazing design idea, but they're all isolated. And this is, I think, actually what happens quite a lot. So I thought about how can I solve? How can I help my product managers and designers to solve this better? And if anyone thinks, what is the impact on product? Then I've got two product reviews here. I didn't mention the company, but if you read them, you can clearly see how customers are complaining about the design being off. And for me, this is a typical example of a lack of collaboration and a lack of developers, PMs, designers just being on different thought process altogether. So I thought, let's retrospect. Let's see what goes wrong. How can we not do these things? Because the reason why I'm here, and hopefully the viewers are here, is to ensure we don't have these mistakes. So I'm going to talk about a product which I launched. I was in AirAsia. It was our own in-house wallet. It's quite common where you can add money and you can spend on things within the app. We had quite tight timelines. It was like a couple of months. It might look long, but for a product to be launched, to go to the market, it's a tight timeline. We have a lot of moving parts. I remember we had finance and payment and marketing, and usually with a pocket, you have legal things as well. And there was vagueness, like we were not sure what is to be delivered, what might change. The scope kept changing. Typical product stuff. If you work with product teams, when there is something new, things do change. But I'm going to talk to this journey where I think I committed some of those mistakes which I mentioned, but then also I would like to explain how I kind of overcome those mistakes, and how can you as a designer also work better with product managers. So I'm going to talk about learnings. I think the first learning, and for me this is so important, is that y- product managers and organizations in general need to embed design in the heart of product lifecycle. It's got to be there very early. So if I look at this product lifecycle where, and this is very generic one, but you know the drill. You think of an idea, you develop a concept, you start developing, you roll something out. Often I realize that designers are involved during development where everything is ready, you have decided the metrics and everything else. But I truly believe that the right point to involve them is much earlier. It's got to be when you're creating the idea, when you are validating the idea. And I get it that PMs have more business context, but designers always have a lot of input. They understand the user problems you're trying to solve. So a message would be, get your designers involved. And if you're a designer, try to be involved much more early. And I got this amazing picture from ChatGPT. I love this. It's called the plant growth metaphor, where essentially the picture on the left shows if designers are too late, everything is done in isolation. You don't get the fruits. While if they are involved early and things are much more collaborative, you can have those amazing fruits. So again, the learning for us was that we involved designers and research from day zero, not even day one. Like even when we were developing this, they were involved. I gave use cases and motivation. Designers gave thought on designs and the flow and the bigger picture. We did validation. We had bi-weekly updates. Again, earlier and more frequent is always better. The second part, I'm not a big fan of models, but this McKinsey model is something which I really like. McKinsey has a lot of useless models. This one is really good, and it's called the trust equation. And I think it doesn't matter if you're a designer, if you're a product manager, if you're anywhere, if you have stakeholders and if you have people you work together with, this is really important. And this is basically, trust is built by credibility, reliability, intimacy, and it's decreased if you are self-oriented. And apply this everywhere with everyone with your work, and you will realize how easy it is to develop trust. In our case, since it was a PM and design relationship, we decided the best way to develop this trust is again by thinking of all those three things. So credibility, extremely important. If you're a product manager, give the bigger picture. If you're a designer, think about already what kind of user problems the the picture is trying to solve. What kind of behaviors would you expect? Reliability. If you promise something, deliver. If you're a product manager, give those updates. Let the designers know where we are. If you're a designer, Stick to your timelines, explain how things are, get your design reviews done. Don't wait for product managers to nudge you. And intimacy, which is like meet often. It's a pet peeve of mine where I see like the interaction between designers and PM is like so inorganic. It's just meeting when you have to meet them. The meeting should be much more often, and also meet in good and bad. And don't just meet like when you're having an amazing time. Even if things are wrong, go and nudge your designers. And again, don't be selfish. Don't disrespect designers. Think of them as a team. Uh, uh, a typo. It's not don't talk about their importance, but do talk about their importance. So it's very important, like you as a product manager, let your leaders know how important designers are. Give them timely feedback. Don't isolate designers. So essentially, you can build trust if you're credible, if you're reliable, if you have intimacy, and if you're not selfish. And we did during AirAsia, where we had data sources and PRD up to date. Designers always kept me involved in their feedback sessions. When I was managing things upwards, I kept design decisions clear. We had a lot of interaction. So build this trust and you're going to go a long way. My third point is about clear boundaries. Again, I kind of feel all the things which I'm saying can be so generic. You could use it for a PM EM, PM research, a designer. It could be applied for any two people, but essentially have clear boundaries. I got this generic one, but the key message is uh, don't be afraid to draw boundaries. I know it's counterintuitive where you want to work together, but boundaries are really useful because then you have a very clear separation. So you need to have boundaries on what are the timelines, who owns what kind of data you need. Saying no is okay. This was a huge thing where we accepted that at times we're gonna say difficult no's. Take breaks. When you're tired, just cancel a meeting and say, I just want to think about this piece of work. Share your frustrations. It's so common in projects that people don't share frustrations, and in the end it shows in their design. Or if you're a product manager, in the end it shows during your product reviews. And be open in communication. There is no you need to make ground rules where the first rule is that you could a PM could ask as stupid of a question, and a designer could ask anything. So be open in communication. And I think in AirAsia we did that quite well, where it was like I was preparing the why and the what. I was owning the data. I was doing stakeholder management. My role was to take care of priority expectations, while my designers were taking care of deliveries and reviews and feedback loops and all of that good stuff. So really setting up very clear boundaries is extremely important, and this will help you to avoid chaos, because often when a problem comes, you're not sure who owns it and who should be taking a first stab at it. But in this way, if you have the trust, it's quite clear on who owns what. And then I love Gordon Ramsay, and I love this song. So this might be very specific, but I also feel that often I used to see, at least in my teams, and I will show my picture, that I am like a person in the middle, but actually I shouldn't be there. So a common scenario which happened to me, like during my sprints, is like a dev would ask me that, hey, I need the right icon, I need the right animation, and then I would ask my designer that, what, could you do that? And then I would get like a reverse Uno played to me, which is like, can I know for which OS? And it used to really bug me out because ideally I shouldn't be there. I mean, uh, these are two people who can communicate with each other, but the reality is I think their work and the way it's like the opposite ends of spectrum. Engineers are extremely technical and they need really concrete information, while designers can be a bit more high level. But I think one of the things which a good product manager should do is to initiate the bridge. So ideally, I'm not saying you shouldn't be there, but for often when these questions are asked, you could just enable that bridge for engineers to speak with the designers. And I can tell you, it's such a huge shift in mindset, because once your designers start speaking a bit of tech language, and once your engineers start understanding a bit on how design works, you will feel so much better as a product manager. And I know this talk is not for PMs, but I'm speaking to all the designers who are here. Don't be afraid to ask questions to your engineers. If you think that that font is not correct, if you think that this animation is too slow, you should have the capacity to speak to a developer and straight up say that, hey, there is something off. And how I did this was, there are some common meetings. Like if you're a product manager, you meet with your developers in stand-ups and groomings. And if you're a designer, you would probably do have like a design PM sync, a design review. Try to get people in these meetings where you can say that, hey, why don't we have a designer today join our stand-up very quickly so that the question can be answered? Why don't we have a developer join a design PM sync where he can get clarity on his question? So the important part is that once that silo breaks down, and I think it's just once it breaks down, the interaction becomes much more smoother. I think this is very important. This really worked for me, where we got these two people much more independent. So like I said, encourage that direct communication, even though it's difficult. Get them in the same meeting, get them in the same room. It's chaotic, but it really works. And let them develop their own boundaries, just like PMs and designers have boundaries. Designers and tech will also have boundaries, but enables that close collaboration which all organizations want. I mean, being in leadership, we always say that data scientists and researchers and designers and marketing and product marketing should speak with each other. But these are the things which we can do to enable that, and you will also save yourself a lot of headache. I'm getting to the end of my presentations. So this is to prove it did work. That's our wallet which we did launch. Everything was fine. This is just showing that it did work, and I'm just not making things up. And here are some key takeaways, because I always like to finish with things you can do from tomorrow, which means that tomorrow when you start working, you can start doing these changes. So first, communicate more, communicate early, communicate frequently, have that trust and respect. Think of what do others expect from you, what do you expect from them. Embed design into your product lifecycle. Don't wait for that last moment. Have that feeling of togetherness where you win together, you lose together, and be transparent. Be transparent when you need or are working with tight timelines. Be transparent when you don't need designers and you can actually give them more time to do what they like. And I think this is the end of my talk. More than happy to answer any questions, more than happy to share my slide. Here's a QR code if you do want to add me on LinkedIn. Yeah, that is the end of my talk. I think we have exactly 11 minutes to go for a Q&A. So Rory, happy to take any questions, if any.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Madhwan. So everybody out there, if you have any questions, please do write them in and I'll put those questions through. But the first question that I'm going to start with is, and it's a difficult one. It's all well and good saying get people involved earlier. It's all well and good saying we should engage people more. But then we get the budget question. And it costs money to get people involved. So the whole point is, well, we need to do this quick and lean, and that's not efficient. So how do you handle the budget question?
Yeah, that's a really nice one to get started, Rory. So and I would love to be very frank, and I will try to be as frank as I can. But I think you need to. So being someone who has gone through these things, you need to show it works. My biggest way to get approval of budget is to show cases where, and I can tell you, we have had projects where because of budget, we had to share, and there's a whole debate of decentralized versus centralized designers. But we had projects where we decided, hey, let's not have any designer and let's go with it. And I can tell you, we didn't do very well. We did launch it, but we had to spend a lot of time reiterating with designers to show that, nah, it's not good. So I would say, to answer your question, have sponsors where you have done great work, where you show the value of designers, and when you go into that meetings with leadership, make it clear what would the impact of not a designer be. Maybe you can get an MVP. Hey, maybe you can get an increment, but eventually, if your target is to be there, you would need speciality. So I would say look for good cases where you have won and try to again formulate what could the contribution be. And usually I think a couple of times it's difficult, but once you actually start showing the value, it eases out. I get it, not every project will get a full-time design team. You might need to share resources, but it's still better than having a PM draw designs, right? So I would still say it's worth fighting for.
And should people go for a full-time design? Like, should that be the goal, or should they start with kind of part-time?
Yeah, look, again, every org does it differently. If it's a much more mature organization, I can get it that they would have the luxury to have a huge design department. I have been in situations where I had to share designers. So I would say there is no perfect answer, but I always believe that if you do have scarcity of resources, having a centralized model, well, not centralized, a centralized model, right, where you can have designers for each project, is good because then each designer works on A and a B and a C. But I think eventually I like the decentralized pattern because if you have one designer for one product, that designer doesn't feel like a support team. He is there. He would be able to work with you on roadmaps. So I would say, yeah, there is no perfect answer, but yeah, you could always consider having a shared approach to start off. But once you see that you are doing quite well and you want to reach the scales of millions, then you probably would benefit with a much more dedicated resource.
Great. We do have a comment rather than a question from Paul, just saying, I'm a PM with a UX design background. Honestly, I think PMs without at least some basic UX design skills are like fish out of water.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, look, I do agree that most PMs should have basic UX, and I think most of us do, but I think it's also what works against us. Like a lot of the PMs think that, it's a simple UI and a simple mock which they can make, but that's my point is design is not just about mocks and UI. It's much more about understanding user behavior and getting the bigger picture. And actually, everyone loves things like conversions and bookings and getting those great numbers. And I really do believe having a great design sense there is something where designer can contribute a lot. So yeah, I think sometimes we can be our own enemies by thinking that we could handle that, but then we realize that we never thought of this flow and we never thought about how do we make our products much more inclusive. There are a lot of things now if you're looking to target millions and have products across geographies.
Great. Another kind of thorny one. What about people who don't want to be collaborating as closely? It's great to say, oh, we should get everybody and everybody wants to do it. But I've worked with some people and they're like, no, I don't want to do that. You just tell me and that's your job.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have also had this kind of people. What I said is very ideal. Uh, if the person can do their job well, it should be fine. Here is what I believe. I get it. Every person is different. I totally get it. In an ideal world, uh, living and working with that is going to be difficult in the long run. But again, I would again really try to show the values. I'm really like I believe in doing things. So if you can probably show and explain that, look, you want to work on your own, it's fine. But do you want to spend hours reiterating, or do you just want to get in a room and get this done? And that often moves the needle because even as PMs, I've had people who are like, I don't want to attend a meeting, just send me a Google Doc. And then you spend like hours on that Google Doc, and then you ask like yourself, like, we could do this in half an hour if we were just sitting in a room. So why don't you and the designer and a developer sit in a room and get that sorted out? And everyone loves free time, right? You get 2 hours of free time, you can go out there. So maybe just proving that if you want to be alone, you can, but then you're going to be spending a lot more time. And I think that no one wants to spend more time, on things which they can do quicker.
Yeah, no, that's a great approach to it. We have another question from Patrick, and I'll just summarize it a little bit. He's saying he has a great PM UX relationship, but not so great PM engineering relationship. So what's your advice in such a situation, and what
Yeah,
can
I
you
need
do
to do
to?
another talk for that, Patrick. I could speak hours about that. Look, very quickly, a lot of those points. Look, it cannot be quick because PM and engineers again different. I like to call it. I hope my EM is not here. I like to call it a different dinosaur, because it's much more different. I think a lot of these things apply. But again, it's a bit different because usually I think the expectations are different, and I think EMs are a lot more about tight estimations and ensuring that their developers are not being, are not working on things which are never going to go live. So I would say I would love to kind of, I don't know, connect with you separately. I have, I mean, I have so much experience working with directors of technology and SEMs. So I would say the process is the same, but there are nuances, but those nuances are quite big. But yeah, essentially, again, be transparent, develop that trust, and also kind of involve engineers early, and don't just go to them with a PRD saying, get a developer for me and I want this delivered in a month. That's probably not going to work very well. But yeah, maybe a different topic one day for me to talk about.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a difficult one. And on that, actually, one of the things that often a developer might say is, and I know this from my development days as well, context switching is really distracting.
Yeah.
So you can be really focused on something, you're really thinking deeply, and then somebody taps you on the shoulder and you lose it all, and it takes you a while to get back in. So back to your points about more frequent and constant communication, how do you find that balance between, I guess, over communication and too frequent?
That is a very good point, and this is where I feel it's the team who needs to decide that. I know people who want over communication, but I also know people who, like you mentioned, do not like context switching, and that's why I can tell you in AirAsia we had like a weekly one, and no one liked it because it was too much, and then we had like a monthly one, but then that was too frequent, and eventually we settled down for once every 2 weeks. So again, it's like you iterate and you try to work what's best for you. But I totally agree that context switching is real. Maybe I can do it very fast because part of my job does involve meeting with everyone, but find your own balance by maybe optimizing it. A TLDR is, don't just do it because you have to set up a meeting. Don't do it just because there has to be a rec meeting. Do it when you feel that everyone involved can contribute, and then that will take care of context switching. So yeah, decide what suits best for everyone. Play around with it a bit.
Brilliant. Well, I think that pretty much takes us to time. So I just want to thank you once again for sharing. I thought it was a great, interesting, topical talk that we had a lot of engagement as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm more than happy to take questions on LinkedIn or any other platform. And yeah, thanks again, folks, for joining.
Brilliant. Well, that actually brings us to an end for today. But if you did like the talks that we had, please do consider joining us at one of our main conferences that we run. So we'll be in Berlin and online in late May. And we'll also, for those in the US, we'll be in New York in earlier May. So we're doing a week apart with the two events this year. It's the same kind of concept of what we've talked about, but we really lean into the cross-functional. So there will be product managers, UX researchers, designers, and developers there. So you can get that full product team experience. It's also Black Friday week at the moment. So if you are interested, it's the cheapest you'll be able to get tickets. So please do consider joining us at that. And if not, I look forward to seeing you at the next UXDX Online. So I just want to thank our speakers once again, and thank you for joining us. Good night.